Looking for a job isn't easy. It used to be that you could apply at a big name tech company and build a great career for yourself. But times have changed. Many of these companies have gone full woke. And if you aren't the right gender, ethnicity, you don't use pronouns, or if you're not an activist for the preferred cause, then good luck. Why would you risk your career on that? At Red Balloon, we're connecting good employees with top quality companies that value you for your skills and your work ethic, not your social activism score. Employers who post jobs on Red Balloon are focused on creating an enjoyable and productive work culture, free from divisive woke mandates. So if you want to find a serious career path without the nonsense, come to Red Balloon and post your resume today. Because you shouldn't have to choose between your job and your values. That's redballoon.work, where you can find your future.
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told. We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It's good to be with you, Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, and I'm the water boy. Yeah, I'm still the water boy. Yeah. Not going anywhere.
You looked a little confused about that. It's scaring me.
I've been staying up late working on an Excel document for like the last 5 nights in a row. It's been very tedious work, but
we get it. We get it. You're working for Cross Politic. Yeah, we got it.
I'm working hard for our club members.
Yeah, I got it. That's what you really wanted to say.
Right. Hey, the mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty necessary to preserve their God-given rights. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. They're free craftsmen, and body armor is a tool of liberty. They create tools of liberty, and free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny wherever it appears. God's given us the tools of liberty, needed to defend those rights He's bestowed upon us, and Armored Republic is honored to offer you those tools with body armor. So visit them today at ar500armor.com. That's AR, the number 500, the word armor.com.
We're going to talk about the shooting tomorrow, but I just want to say that they sell backpacks. Just so
bulletproof,
right? So that I'm just saying that you go check out their backpacks.
Check out AR 500. Hey, we're really grateful to have with us Mr. Harvey Silverglate, advocate for civil liberties since the 1960s. He's an attorney, writer, nonprofit activist. He co-founded the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, also known as FIRE. He's also the author of The Shadow University, The Betrayal of Liberty on America's Campuses, and the book 3 Felonies a Day, How the Feds Target the Innocent. Mr. Harvey, thank you for joining us on Cross Politic.
It's good to be here.
Thank you very much. So how is it, the title is great, 3 Felonies a Day. How is it that the average person is a felon 3 times a day?
Well, the federal criminal code, which most people don't realize, does not specify, for the most part, specific crimes. It specifies means. That is to say, there is most federal prosecutions, the overwhelming number of federal prosecutions are brought under the statute that makes it a crime to commit a fraud by use of the mails or the means of interstate communication, phone, for example. In other words, it's the means that a federal jurisdiction. But fraud, for the most part, is not defined. So a fraud is whatever a federal prosecutor can convince a jury or a federal appellate court is somehow fraudulent.
Wow.
And that's the problem, because there is no federal general criminal jurisdiction. The Constitution doesn't allow it. Typical crimes are state crimes, right?
Right.
Murder, larceny. These are arson. These are state crimes, state common law crimes. But for the Fed to get jurisdiction, they have to show that you've used the phone, you've used the wires of interstate communication, you've used
Zoom.
the means of. And the bottom line is that almost everything can be a federal felony. We're right now using communication lines so that if I defraud you or you defraud me during this interview, we've committed a federal crime because you're in one state, I'm in another state.
I was going to ask
it's
you.
Absurd. It's absolutely absurd, and it makes a joke out of the whole idea of limited federal jurisdiction. It's not limited; it's virtually unlimited.
Wow,
that's the problem.
So, what federal crime could you be committing right now, being on our show?
Well, if I tell you something that's patently false, and I have an economic motive for doing that, I could be a fraud. If I incite your audience to commit a crime by something I've said, I've arguably committed a crime.
Wow.
These are matters that normally have been, for centuries, have been state matters, have been English common law matters. But the feds have really taken over. Now, they don't prosecute everything because they don't have the resources to prosecute everything. But the way they pick and choose can be very political. And we've seen that now during the era of Trump. Mm-hmm. They're going after people. Now, I'm no supporter of Trump, but I think that some of his supporters who are being gone after under federal statutes, vague federal statutes that give no warning as to what it is that's a crime, that it's unfair and it should be unconstitutional. But unfortunately, because of opinions by the Supreme Court, it's not unconstitutional.
Well, if our court systems and judges know this, what you're saying, this is not something that is new to them. Why do they even allow this type of gaming in their courtroom?
Well, it started that way early on, and the courts follow precedent. So if something done in some case was decided in 1860, or some case was decided in 1920, or 1950, or 1980, it's supposed to be followed unless there's a very good reason for overturning a precedent. Precedents are rarely overturned. They are overturned from time to time, but they're rarely overturned. So you have to convince a court that either the original precedent was wrongly decided, or subsequent events have shown that the decision was wrong, or that it's no longer relevant because times have changed. So it's a much harder case. Much harder to win a case if you have precedent against you than if you have precedent for you.
So our law is supposed to be based on common law. I mean, the what you're talking about before, most crimes are adjudicated at the state level for that very reason. But clearly we have a kind of, I don't know, I mean, are we still, is common law still in effect in our land, or have we rejected that?
Believe it or not, federal law does not rely on, has nothing to do with common law. All of our state, one exception, Louisiana, follow the common law.
Okay.
The federal system does not follow the common law. Federal crimes are defined by statute and by regulations promulgated by regulatory agencies. And as I said, the mail fraud and wire fraud statutes are extremely vague. Now, there are some federal crimes that are not vague and not under the fraud statute. For example, tax evasion. If the statute and the regulations, the Internal Revenue Code, are quite specific. It's not easy to understand, but they're quite specific. It really takes a certified public accountant to understand the tax code. So there are federal, if you do something through interstate commerce, kidnapping is a federal crime if you take the victim across state lines.
Right.
Prostitution is a federal crime if you take the prostitute across state lines. So a lot depends on where you are, where you commit the crime. As I said, you don't specify the crimes so much as the means, the interstate commerce.
I've understood the Ninth Amendment in particular in the Bill of Rights to have been sort of at least an appeal to common law. That those things that are not enumerated herein in the Constitution. There are other laws, there are other rights that are not enumerated here, which are retained by the people. Is that not an appeal to common law?
Well, it's a sort of a common law sensibility to it, but it's not specifically based on common law, because in any republic that claims to value the freedom of citizens, something in order to be a crime has to be specified. The whole notion that the joke among lawyers is that vague federal statutes are essentially "thou shalt not do that which should not be done." It's a tautology.
Yeah,
it's a joke, but more truth to it than one wants to admit, because again, that which should not be done depends on a judge's interpretation of what a federal crime is, and the federal crime is undefined except as to means. You use the mails, you use the phone, that kind of thing.
So then, when you see teachers that are fighting against the school systems and the feds come in, everybody seems to be really shocked that they can show up at your door, they can arrest you, and they're like, oh, what are the feds doing here? But this seems like that this is a vague setup to be able to keep us in line or some sort of control over us, and it seems legal to do.
Yeah, and that's the fault of the Supreme Court. This is a long line of cases that give the feds this kind of power. I think they have far too much power, and I've said that in my various books. I've said that in lectures. I also have big problems, huge problems with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I don't know if you want to get into that.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going with this.
Have any of you been approached and interrogated by a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent?
Not that I know of.
All right, you're not about to prophesy, are you?
This is how it works. This is the biggest scam. This is how it works. Agents want to interview you. They come into your home or your office, wherever you are. There are always two of them. An FBI interview is never, ever conducted by one agent. Now, I'll explain why in a minute.
Okay.
So the agents sit down, and I've had this with clients who come into my office when the FBI says, we'd like to interview your clients, that come on into my office. Agents show up. One of them pulls out a pad and is taking notes. Other one is interrogating my client. I pull out a tape recorder. The agent says, we're not allowed to do an interview with the tape recorder going. This is true. There's an FBI regulation. And I say, well, I have my own views about this, and I don't allow my clients to be interviewed except if it's recorded.
Yeah.
They get up and they walk out. Now, why do they insist that there not be a recording? That agent who's taking notes, after the interview is over, the two agents go back to FBI headquarters. The one who's taking notes types up what's called a Form 302, which is a report of an interview conducted by an agent. And that Form 302 is the official record of what it is you, the witness, the interviewee, said. If you then end up in court and you're testifying, and if you testify differently from what's in the 302, you've committed a federal crime. Either you're lying in court or you lied to the agent. It is a felony to lie to any federal employee. You can't even lie to the postmaster in your town. I mean, any federal, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of federal employees, and they are all covered by this pernicious statute. You're not allowed to lie. It's a crime to lie to any federal employee. So the bottom line is, you are stuck with a version of your story, not that you remember, not that you believe is true, not that you even said to the agent, but you're stuck by the version that the agent who's taking notes.
Right.
That's why they don't allow recording, because the recorder is accurate. It would show that the agent has not accurately recorded what you said. It's a scam. It's a crime, but it's not, because it's done by the government. Wow. How do you like that?
I need to carry around a recorder with me. Well, I got my cell phone everywhere I go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's insane.
And you can't have a secret recorder, because that's a crime.
So wait,
recording somebody without knowledge that you're recording them is another federal crime.
Doesn't that depend on state, though? Which state you're in?
The state has separate laws. For example, there are a lot of states which have two-party consent. If you're on the phone, you're speaking to somebody and you're recording it, and you're in a state which is a two-party consent, that's a crime, because it requires the person on the line to know and consent to the recording.
Right.
There are other states which are not, where you can record somebody that you're speaking to, because it's legal in the state that you are recording in, even if it's not legal in the state that the other person is in. But that is state law. Federal law supersedes state law, and federal law is quite different. And I just described for you one of the greatest scams of federal criminal law and one of the greatest scams of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Wait, so hold on. This is when your stewardess is a federal agent on an airplane. If you're on an airplane, they're federal agents. Aren't they
TSA?
Aren't they federal employees? They're federal employees,
Is
right?
the Delta stewardess a federal employee?
That's what they said.
No, they're not.
They're not.
They're not. Well, remember everything that was going on? Hey, if you have a problem with a federal employee, they have federal charges they apply against you because they work for the government.
That's different. That's a different story. If you disrupt an air flight, the federal law does cover the flight, but they don't employ the stewardess. They don't employ the pilots. But because it's interstate, these flights are covered. You see,
but they're not. Okay. They're not federal employees.
Okay, because they act like it. Okay,
that's why if a terrorist hijacks a plane, that is not only a state offense, but it's a federal offense.
All right, go ahead. Pastor.
So a minute ago, you said, Mr. Silverglate, that there's a long line of decisions that the Supreme Court made that got us to this place. Are you able to trace that line for us a bit?
Yes. It all out where the Supreme Court decided that as long as the means of interstate commerce or the interstate communication were used, then it's defined as a federal crime. So all kinds of state crimes become federal crimes because of the means. That was the mistake. Because, bank robbery, sure, it's a federal crime because the funds are insured by the FDIC.
Wow.
But the idea that if you committed an ordinary fraud and you do it because you're on the phone and you exaggerate to somebody, something you're selling them is really worth $100 and you claim it's worth $1,000 because it's got such and such provenance, blah, blah, blah. This is a classic state common law crime, but it becomes a federal crime if you use a telephone or a telegraph in order to facilitate the crime. And that lets the feds pick and choose whatever they want. If they want to get you, they can get you.
Wow.
That's what's there. But that was the original sin that the Supreme Court allowed federal criminal jurisdiction because of the means. The means are almost invariably involve the phone. You don't have crimes that don't involve somehow phone, writing a letter, an email. Email now was ubiquitous.
Right.
That gives them jurisdiction.
When was that?
If we had some courageous judges that wanted to turn this back,
it would have to be the Supreme Court of the United States.
Okay. And what would if they were asking you for advice, what would you advise them to do? Because there are some things that, as you note, really are the federal jurisdiction, but they've massively overstepped. How would you distinguish between legitimate federal jurisdiction and illegitimate, just getting into everybody's business?
Well, I would say this: if somebody carried a bomb from New Jersey to New York and set the bomb off, that arguably would be a reasonable federal jurisdiction because they have transported the means of the assault, deadly assault, in interstate commerce. I think that's the outer limit. Obviously, bank robbery, if it's federally insured money, there's an obvious federal link. Tax evasion of your federal income taxes, there's an obvious federal interest. Those are not difficult cases. They start to get difficult when the link to federal jurisdiction involves interstate commerce or interstate communications. And I would hugely narrow the range of permissible federal criminal jurisdiction that are based solely on interstate commerce or interstate communications.
Yeah.
Why are we letting states' rights get so eroded in all this? Seems like states' rights in the 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment that Toby brought up earlier, that those are pretty key in all this.
The problem is states' rights got a bad rep in the Civil War.
Right.
And remember, the 14th Amendment passed after the Civil War. Yep. And it's not unusual that, first of all, there's a school of history that argues that Lincoln made a mistake in the Civil War. He should have, this country is largely two countries divided north and south. And it probably should have been two countries. They would have a treaty. They would have mutual defense treaty, so that if the Russians got smart, too aggressive, they would join. But this is two countries. Yeah. And
well, I'm from Texas, so you just you're talking to me.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I'm not. There are Civil War scholars who agree with me. I'm not the only one.
We're with you.
It's not the first time we're hearing about it. That, and I think we follow that pretty well here. At least our audience does. So we're in line with you here.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems. But there are really areas where the feds have no legitimate interest, but where they do have jurisdiction, and they interfere in areas of culture that they shouldn't. What's going on now? In the school cases, the affirmative action cases.
Yeah.
The problem in those cases is that private colleges take federal money, grants and stuff.
Yeah.
There are, I think you can count on one hand the private colleges in this country that intentionally turn down any federal money because they do not want to have federal jurisdiction over how they operate. I think Hillsdale is one of them.
Yep.
New St. Andrews College.
I think there are three.
Yeah, we have one here in town called New St. Andrews College, and they don't take any federal money either.
Yep. There are also a few Orthodox Jewish seminaries that don't take federal money. Okay. They don't want the feds telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. So there are very few, but by and large, the colleges, partly because they eat up so much money by employing so many administrators, they suck up money as like a sponge sucks up water. Mm-hmm. And the feds get jurisdiction by giving grants, by funding science programs and so forth and so on. And at that point, the college is run partly by the own board of trustees and partly by the federal government. Yeah. And that's not the way this Constitution was set up.
I wanted to ask you a question about the school choice conversation that's going on right now. Yeah. It's the ESAs, education savings accounts, school vouchers, and I guess I'm going to key off the question, the funding question that you just point that you just made, that a lot I think some really smart higher education is saying or opting out of it because they don't want the strings, they don't want the federal jurisdiction, we're strong believers in freedom of choice for education. We send our kids to a private Christian school, which means, I'm paying twice. I'm paying for my property taxes for the local public school, and then I'm paying tuition for my kids to go to a local private Christian school. And the one question I've had particularly, I believe in school choice, but the thing with vouchers and education savings accounts is it looks to me like some of the current proposals are ways of actually taking federal money or state money, maybe to begin with, but then that money then starts filling in school, private schools or home schools or whatever. And my question is how do we avoid the same thing that happened to higher education happening to K through 12 education by infusing it with all this government money?
Right. That is a huge problem. And you've asked a central question, because with money goes a certain amount of control.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing we don't want to do, we don't want schools, whether they're elementary or secondary or post or college, we don't want those schools to be run by the federal government. The government can't do anything right. And
amen.
And well, it's true. Yeah. The government is not very efficient. It's not a place where innovative ideas get broached. And you certainly don't want the feds controlling higher education or lower education.
Right.
Education is a quintessentially local thing.
Yeah.
Local school boards have worked in this country for a long time. And you don't want to have the feds setting educational standards, for example.
Right.
You know that it's going to be the product of meetings of mindless bureaucrats. I've dealt with them. And I want to remind you, I'm a political liberal, and bureaucracy drives me crazy.
Yeah,
because they do not think; they react.
Wow, wow.
So you're I kind of, you come off to me a little bit like you're a conservative, but you're actually a political liberal.
I am a political liberal. The reason I have some conservative views is not because I'm a conservative. It's because liberalism has moved away from me to a realm called progressivism, which is a kind of fascism of the left.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are not interested in liberty. They're interested in power.
Yeah.
And so the liberals and the progressives are at war with each other in this country.
Who's going to win?
I think the liberals are going to win because I think that in the end, I think the conservatives and the liberals, I think that the extreme right and the extreme left are going to cancel each other out. They're going to have their private war. And I think that common sense, the survival instinct, national survival instinct will take over. And people will understand that this is crazy. Do you have any idea? Well, you must have some idea of some of the stuff that's taught in the public schools.
Oh, yes.
It's utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. It's political claptrap.
Right. No, I know.
So would you put Biden in the kind of liberal progressive category? And
he's distinguishing between liberal and progressive.
Right. So who would you kind of put in the progressive category, and who would be a good example?
He's more of a traditional liberal, but he has to deal with a lot of the progressives because his majority in Congress depends on it. Mm-hmm. And so he's somewhat limited. He's an old school liberal, Biden. And but for the fact that he has, he has the Bernie Sanders and the, in Kamala Harris is a progressive.
Right.
He was, he's not entirely free to do what he really would like to do.
You mean sleep? Yeah, that seems like that's yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry.
There you go.
That's another problem. I mean, he probably was too old to run for president, but he prevailed over.
Yeah.
You have, who was he running against? Hillary Clinton. Well, she's a progressive. I trust her. I wouldn't turn my back on her for 1 second. She's not a liberal. She's a progressive.
Yeah.
You're my new favorite liberal, Harvey. I just want you to know that.
There's a lot of people who've turned their back on Hillary, and
Harvey, we gotta run. But I mean, I really appreciate you coming on Cross Politics.
If we ever come to New York, we're having a beer.
I'm gonna say
we're gonna buy him. We'll buy you a beer.
We have to figure out another version of this conversation because we just got to the interesting part.
Yeah.
I would really want to talk to you more about this and kind of the difference between classical liberal, or should I say the civil liberties now versus 1960s and the difference between the two, and how I think you're right. Both sides are kind of playing this and people have kind of forgot about it. And I think you seem to be rational. I would really love to have a conversation with you.
Remember, the right and the left got along very well in this country for a long time.
They did.
We fought a war, several wars, and prevailed. We built a huge economic machine. The right and the left got along until the last couple of decades.
Right.
Yes. And something happened. I'd love to know what you think happened. We're going to have to figure out how to...
appreciate you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, Harvey, appreciate it. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
It is the duty of the free man to resist tyranny at every turn. Every man will either watch his freedom stripped away or take action to protect what he loves. Introducing the A3, the newest revolutionary body armor from Armored Republic. The A3 is the new standard for lightweight multi-hit body armor. A3 plates are incredibly light at 4.6 pounds. The patented design captures fragmentation while remaining multi-hit capable. The A3 will stop up to M80 ball, yet comes in at only 0.7 inches thick. The A3 is the thinnest NIJ .06 compliant or certified composite standalone plate that includes the drop test. The A3 is the first of its kind, patent pending, that combines an alloy strike face with polyethylene backing, revolutionizing body armor technology by providing strength and durability while remaining sleek and maneuverable. The A3 is the new standard in lightweight body armor. The fight against tyranny just got stronger.